Hello, gentle viewers. We're back in the studio today and we're filming different ways to tie your handmade books and journals. And I got to thinking about that this week, and there are just so many ways to do it. I decided to just concentrate on using ribbons and different pieces of fabric to tie. We can do hardware, we can do elastics, all of that stuff, you know, on another day. And if you're interested in learning more about different ways to tie up your journals and your books, leave me a comment and let me know that yes, you want to see part 2 of this, and we'll definitely put it down in a list. So today we're going to talk about just using ribbon and fabric ties and sari silks and different ways to tie your journal. So we're gonna do that right now. Okay, so the easiest way obviously is just to take a piece of sari silk and just tie it around your little journal or your little book. This is the inside of it. Goes like this. Nope, doesn't. Goes like this. And so this is just sari silk that I washed several times. It's just a gray sari silk, and just tied it around. And if you don't know what sari silk is, it's literally silk made from an Indian sari that Indian women wear. And this is just a scrap of ribbon that I tied around this little book. So that's the easiest way to do it, obviously, is just to tie it. But today we're going to talk about stitching and holding them together with knots. So this little journal is a travel journal, and it is one of the easiest ways to do this is simply to actually, this was an old photo album, an antique photo album, a tiny little one that I used for our European trip. There's your wonderful videographer there. And so we're going to do a whole segment on what makes a great travel journal. This is certainly one of my favorites. I really love this one. And but we're talking about ties. So the easiest way to do this is you've got a knot either on the inside or a knot on the outside, and you just pierce the cover of your journal. And so the way I did this was, since usually I would use an awl, but this one was a little bit harder to get through because it was an antique journal. So I took a nice thin nail, and I used my antique books, one of my old books, and just kind of pounded it through until I got the hole all the way through. And then I cut the ribbon at an angle and used my awl to poke it through, and then I tied the knot on the inside, and I just left it that way. Now if your journal is going to take a lot of abuse, you might want to take a piece of fabric and cut this off and glue it on. I particularly liked the inside of the journal cover, of the album cover, and so I left it that way. It matched my tape really well, and so I just wanted to leave it like that. But if it's going to get a lot of abuse, you might want to glue it down and then recover this, you know, inside cover to your journal. And then you do the same thing on the back side, real simple. And you know, you want to coordinate your ribbon or whatever, you know, you can use all different kinds of things, anything that you want to tie it up with. So here's another journal that I created. This one has the knots on the outside, real simple. And this is a handmade journal too. This is another travel journal that I particularly like from one of our Caribbean travels. The outside is, the cover is made from a really thin piece of cardboard, and it was so thin that I was actually able, and I hope you can see this, I was able to use a hole punch and punch it, and then I tied the knot on the outside because I really liked the way it looked on the outside and the back. And this is from an old sheet that I washed several times, and I used the end of a tea dye bath and just stained it slightly. I really liked the way it came out. I wanted it to look like a shipwrecked book. It's one of my favorite covers. And the outside of this cover, I used that technique that I showed you in one of the other videos, the Tyvek journal. This is walnut ink and different acrylic inks. So, give you a quick tour of this one. It's we'll thumb through these all one day when I show you the best and how to make a really good travel journal. I have several travel journals, but this is one of my favorites. Anyway, so you get the idea. So that's one of the simplest things to do, really easy peasy. Then the next thing is to use buttons or some kind of I'm going to call it a doodad, because you know how I am with appropriate names. And this is one of those dealios that you get on an envelope where you would take the string, tie it this way, and then tie it the other way. There'd be two of these. I just ripped this off an envelope and then put it on my my travel journal. This is another European travel journal. And I just did the same thing. I just knotted on the inside, simply knotted on the inside, and then ran the ribbon through, and then just tied it around, simple like that. And you can do the same thing with a button. Keep all those big buttons that you have. They work really well. This is an art journal of mine. This is like, I don't know what year, 2011, I guess. So simply tied. This time I reinforced it. You can see where I recovered. And put a velvet strip here and just ran it through, and then ran it around my button just like that. So you want to hang on to those. Okay, then the last one I want to show you is my Alice journal. This is one of my favorite journals, and I'm going to show you how to do this technique. This is super simple, and I use this quite a bit. It's got this wonderful ribbon here. It's a fun little journal about Alice in Wonderland. This is an infamous journal because it set off the alarms. TSA was not happy with me. They went all through my luggage digging this out, and then when they found it, they all laughed, which is great because you don't want the TSA to be mad at you. So anyway, I'm going to show you how to do this right now. This technique is really easy. You just have to plan it. That's the problem with it. You have to really know what you want to do with your journal, what your journal wants to be, and all of that. Usually, I work on the cover after I've done the work inside my journal. And this one I knew I wanted to do an Alice in Wonderland journal. I think I did this in like 2011. So I knew that I wanted to do something, similar to this. I knew I wanted to have an old Alice book cover on the front, and I knew what it was going to be. But so it takes some planning. You have to think about it, and you remember my little bug book, and I'm making this library. And so this last book that I used for a demonstration, I thought I would show you how I'm going to create and use the same technique that I used on Alice with this little book. And so what I wanted to do is use a key, because I wanted it to be kind of a key to the story or creation inside the book. And I thought that this would give me a really wide range of things to work on within the book. The key to my heart, the key to the story. There's a lot of different ways that I can work in this book with this. So I created a piece, and I wanted to use a piece of cardboard, or this is a really hard piece of book cover that I sanded and covered with the Alice cover paper. It was actually the book cover that I used for this. I knew I wanted to use another piece of cardboard here because I wanted to use the key. I definitely wanted to use this little key, and I have kept several old keys. Actually, this used to be full and I've pretty much used them all. There we go. Now you can see it. And so I wanted to use this on here, but the problem with using a key on a book, if you've ever done this, is that it won't lie completely flat. So I'm going to actually adhere it to the cardboard, and this is simply a piece of mixed media paper that I've collaged, and then I use some watercolor and, not watercolor, but acrylic and some walnut ink. Sorry, that I forgot the name of it. Then I'm going to attach it to this and then glue it down to the book. And now you have to remember that we have to put ribbon through there, and I was trying to decide whether I wanted this ribbon or I wanted the black velvet. And I think I'm leaning toward the black velvet because, well, I've got this major crush on gold and black together, and it's a really nice contrast, don't you think? Okay, so I think we're going to do black velvet. So I'm going to stitch this down. Okay, so I'm all ready to show you this technique. So I'm going to tie this to the mixed media paper that I decorated for the front of my cover. And I'm simply going to use my awl, and I have an old book that, of course, I've ripped the cover off of, probably made another book with it. And I'm going to just center it, and then I'm going to punch holes where I want my key to go, where I want the stitches to go into the paper. I want fairly good punches. And then I'm going to use some upholstery thread, and I'm going to wax it. Now I know people are going to ask me, where do you get the beeswax? Well, the beeswax I got at Jerry's Artorama. You can probably get it at Dick Blick. I've seen it in a number of different art supply places. If you just have some beeswax around, that's great. And I'm waxing it with this because eventually it's going to shear off on your book, and your key will just fall off. So if I wax it, it will hold it on a little bit longer. So I'm waxing a pretty good sized piece of it, and I waxed it earlier, so it has a nice waxy feel to it. And then I'm going to stitch through here. So now I have this piece secured. I really like the way it turned out. And I'm going to glue the mixed media collage piece down. Now in this, for the Alice journal, I simply glued the whole thing down so that the ribbon isn't going to move. But in this journal, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put the ribbon through. And this is why you have to give it some thought, otherwise it will be all glued down and you won't be able to use it. I'm not going to glue the ribbon down. That way there'll be a space underneath here, and I can change the ribbon out later if I want to. Because I'm making a library of books, And what I want is this book to go with this book, and I'm going to have several that are in this library. They're all going to be around the same color range, and they're all going to look like they want to live together, like a series. So if I want to change this out later, I can do that. So right now I'm going to just open up my gel matte medium, and I'm going to glue the top and the side down. Okay, so I'm just gluing the top. I'm just putting some gel medium on the top and the... So I've just glued the bottom and the top, and I'm going to just lay it down here, being really careful not to get any on the ribbon. And I'm going to put some heavy clamps on it to hold it down, and we'll come right back when it's dry. Alrighty then, so I'm just going to take these off. Heavy duty clamps. And bring my ribbon together, make a little cut, tie it up, and all set. There we go. Now, if I want to change the ribbon, and I decided that I wanted this one instead, this watercolor ribbon, because I've left this open, it'll be really, I don't know if you can see that, but I don't want to put my finger underneath here or it's going to lift up and pull up on the glue. But you could just simply take a safety pin, a large safety pin, and feed it through there and tie it again. So it's really great when you can leave that space underneath, because it gives you options, and options are always good. I hope you enjoyed that little vlog post on tying up your handmade journals and books. And next time we're going to be working on journal prompts. I'm going to give you a little tour through some of my journals and talk to you about some of the things that that you might want to use to prompt yourself to creating some pages, especially if you don't do a process like I do. And if you're interested in my process, I have 4 videos that document my process about art journaling. And I'm also working on tissue paper part 2. I've got a couple of techniques that I'm experimenting with, and I'll be looking forward to sharing that with you soon. So, ciao ciao.